Hello and welcome back. Before we get to part 2, Real Talk, please allow us to fulfill our capitalistic duty and plug our Patreon, the Contrarian Supplements.
That's right. For a small fee, you too can help the Contrarians rage on.
We have tiers ranging from just $1 to $10. It all depends on how much content you can handle.
Starting at $1, it's the Travoltis tier, which gets you access to new bonus episodes focusing on a new movie every month, as well as access to the patron chat. Join other patrons in making fun of our opinions.
Moving up to $3 is the Winonis tier, which unlocks access to our pre-recording notes, our video reviews, and our spin-off show, Contrarians After Hours.
That's a more laid-back space where we talk about other things we've been watching, reading, playing, thinking about. Sometimes it's related to the movies being covered in the main feed, but it usually isn't.
If you want to be part of those patrons who help us shape the show by telling us which movies to tackle, that's when you sign up for the $5 tier, the Embries, and the $10, the Gads.
Finally, all supplement subscribers, regardless of the tier, get access to our archive of special patron projects. Head over to patreon.com/contrarianprime now to join.
Be sure to listen through the end of the episode to find out what's coming up to the Contrarian Supplements this month. Now, it's time for some Real Talk.
What do you mean you don't have any blood kin? Well, Debbie's your blood kin.
Not no more, she ain't.
Well, you can keep your will. I don't want any of your property. Besides, I ain't forgetting you was getting all set to shoot her yourself. What kind of a man are you anyway?
She's been living with a buck. She's not that
Shut your
bad.
dirty mouth! I hope you die.
That'll be the day.
All right, Julio. John Wayne officially entered into the hallowed halls of Contrarians canon.
The ultimate honor.
That's true. Yeah. He would love it. He would know exactly what a Rotten Tomatoes is. And he would care. He would, more importantly, he would know what a podcast was. Well, I don't know. He'd listen to a lot of Rogan, so I don't know. But
He would be horrified that podcasters from Austin, Texas are talking about him.
This is true. This is true. The Searchers, brought to us by Chaz Fisher. Do we want to start off with the critical quotes you pulled, or do you just want to go right into our requester?
That's a good question. I was going to say let's start with Chaz, but honestly, I feel like he should close the Real Talk
Makes
quotes.
sense.
Yeah. So let's do that instead. Let's start with the quotes from regular critics. Critics are not our friends. I'm going to start with Win Fanning from Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, who says, "The Searchers is not really a big Western, despite some of the finest scenic shots to be brought to the screen. It is just a long Western. Much too long." Alex doesn't even break 2 hours, but did you feel the length?
Not really. That's a pretty intense criticism.
Look at you, going out to bat for a movie that's over 90 minutes.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's not a movie that I felt the runtime of.
Well, you are at odds with Win Fanning. How about Mildred Martin from the Philadelphia Inquirer, who says, "Visually beautiful, pretentious, dramatically wondering, and downright dull."
Pretentious, eh? Fascinating.
Maybe for the 50s. Now it just feels so... I mean, I wouldn't call it unpretentious. I would just call it a movie.
Yeah, it's, if we want to measure it by like modern standards of pretension, it's a very reserved film.
Sarah Brinks from Battleship Pretension. Speaking of pretension, says, "Overall, I didn't enjoy The Searchers very much. I respect Ford as a filmmaker, and I think he did his best to show a realistic view of how settlers felt about the Native Americans. But it is still a tough film to watch with modern eyes." I can feel that. Sarah is doing her best to be even-keeled in her appreciation, evaluation of The Searchers. I'll do the same. But first, I'm going to close critics' quotes with Francois Truffaut from Arts, parentheses, France. Alex, do you know who Francois Truffaut is? Have you ever heard of him?
I do not.
He was one of the big names in the French New Wave. I know this is film school Julio suddenly taking over.
Thank you.
He started off as a movie critic, and then at some point, filmmakers were like, well, how about you try making a movie instead? And he did. He made the 400 Blows, and it was a big hit. So then he became a filmmaker.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm guessing this is from before he was a filmmaker. I don't know if he continued doing criticism after he made the transition to directing, but whatever the case, not a big fan of John Ford or The Searchers. This quote says, John Ford symbolizes an age of Hollywood, the one when good health prevailed over intelligence, craftiness over sincerity. This age has gone. Elia Kazan's and Nicholas Ray's movies make more money than John Ford's. Poetry triumphs over entertainment. Sounds like Truffaut is a big Kazan fan. I had to click on the link. I was like, wait, Francois Truffaut just dragged John Ford on a review, and so I clicked on the link, and this is like a really old timey. It almost looks like they scanned like a very yellowed page. I don't know if this is a full review or just an excerpt, but I'm gonna read the whole thing because it's pretty interesting. It says, John Ford, if Hollywood was a garrison, would be a warrant officer. Let's give our preference to General Fritz Lang, Colonel Anthony Mann, Lieutenant Robert Aldrich, or even Sergeant Roel Walsh and Quartermaster Sergeant Alan Dwan. Assuming all those are filmmakers. John Ford symbolizes an age of Hollywood, the one when good health prevailed over intelligence, craftiness over sincerity. This age is gone. Elia Kazan's and Nicholas Ray's movies make more money than John Ford's. Poetry triumphs over entertainment. Good health is a virtue, of course, but that is not enough. And John Ford, senile and repetitive, bores us. Always strong and daring heroines, eternal caricatures of Lillian Gish, always the husband giving them a big slap on the butt. Always the same traditional old story and the manly brutality. The starting point of the film, The Searchers, is excellent. John Wayne, for 5 years, looks for 2 women kidnapped by Indians. Since money for these outmoded productions has become less, we don't have the right anymore, today, to the purple passages we used to be offered, but only to their accounts. In The Searchers, the camera always arrives after the battle is over, with John Ford's train arriving late to shoot the still smoking ruins, still warm corpses, and footprints or hoofprints. And since John Ford doesn't know how to film passing time, we feel as if 2 days instead of 5 years have elapsed between the first picture and the last one, and we regret the shabbiness, which is a vice this time. The colors aren't ugly, and if you see the movie at the Rex Theater, the fact that you are allowed to smoke, not to mention the bewildering fairyland of waters, makes up a little for the Fordian boredom. He absolutely obliterated Ford. I thought movie critics, especially movie critics that would eventually become filmmakers, had more of a gentlemanly behavior towards other people in the industry. But man, this is almost like a film Twitter criticism. It just goes knives out.
That was a bit ridiculous. Yeah.
After that, anything that our friend Chaz Fisher has to say about the movie, whether it's positive or negative, is not going to sound too bad. So let's close with Chaz.
Hello, Contrarians. Chaz back again for Real Talk on The Searchers. I know this is a classic movie, but it is boring as fuck. And from my memory of the one watch in which I fell asleep in, it's pretty dated from a sort of colonial white Native American relations perspective. So while I'm sure there are some pretty shots and I'm sure John Wayne grimaces successfully, I feel like there must be other far better classical westerns. I've got a soft spot in particular in terms of John Wayne westerns. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is one of my favorites. So I really am not a big fan of The Searchers. I'm sure that puts me in film Twitter jail if film Twitter were to still exist. But I'm really excited to hear what Alex and Julio think.
All right, so Chaz and Francois Truffaut high-fiving after the double punch to John
Apparently.
Ford and John Wayne. I'm glad that he at least brought up another John Wayne movie that he actually likes, because for people that are into John Wayne and they know his filmography forwards and backwards, then at least that gives him a little more insight. In my case, I was like, I don't know. I do know that this is supposed to be, like you said in Contrarian's Corner, right, at the beginning, that this is one of his most renowned, his and Ford's. Mm-hmm. So kind of a big deal if you don't like it, I guess, especially if you like Westerns. So we know where Chaz stands. We know where Francois Truffaut stands. Now it's up to us to talk about this movie, to reveal our feelings. You sound pretty positive, Alex.
Yeah, had a good time.
Yeah, I could hear the affection in your voice there, Contrarian's Corner. A couple of times where I was trying to be a little mean to John Wayne. You low-key defended him.
Oh, well, that was probably just for the sake of, I mean, as, again, the 1971 Playboy interview is out there, and now's the time to kind of talk about John Wayne in that regard. Also, what was it? Was it 1973? Is that the year that Sacheen Littlefeather went up to accept the award, and John Wayne allegedly had to be like pulled off stage to prevent him from getting up there and, I don't know, punching her or some shit? That was when Brando won for Best Actor.
Okay, I was about to ask you, so he didn't show up, right? Instead, he sent her to collect? Okay.
My name is Sacheen Littlefeather. I'm Apache, and I'm president of the National Native American Affirmative Image Committee. I'm representing Marlon Brando this evening, and he has asked me to tell you in a very long speech, which I cannot share with you presently because of time, but I will be glad to share with the press afterwards, that he very regretfully cannot accept this very generous award. And the reasons for this being are the treatment of American Indians today by the film industry, and on television in movie reruns.
But yeah, John Wayne is the subject of, it's like cyclical, of like, he was not a good person. It's like, yep. Bill Burr had a bit about it. And I remember he talked about that interview with Playboy, like in this bit he did about it, about, can you believe what he said? Yes. He was born in 1907. You know, he was an old white man, you know, so it's more hate filled. It's not as funny and how bitchy as it is as the Gary Oldman one that we always talk about. That Gary Oldman one, I think, was like the last big Playboy interview that like caused any sort of that had any rift to it, I would say. But there's been a lot of those throughout the years. Anyway, yeah, John Wayne, not a good dude. Legendary actor, though, a towering figure of Hollywood. I concede that John Wayne is John Wayne. He plays John Wayne in everything. He was really good at it. And this is kind of no different. I think he's a guy that, based on my experience with his films, the Ray Liotta, Clint Eastwood, probably, you know, the most overrated actor. And I think sometimes people, with the way history talks about John Wayne, would lead you to believe he was like Jack Nicholson, or, you know, you mentioned, for example, Matthew McConaughey, you mentioned earlier. And no, he wasn't those things. But I enjoy this movie. I enjoy the idea of the genre hero, you know, that's why I'm such a big fan of like Arnold and, you know, Sly to a lesser extent. I like the idea of a genre having, you know, a guy that they go to. This movie's pretty good. It's not great, but I found it to be an easy watch with, you know, issues of John Wayne aside. And also, yeah, this movie's really dated. There's some pretty outlandish things by modern standards, one of which like took me out of the movie momentarily. But for the most part, yeah, I enjoyed this. I wasn't bored. Any time that I thought that I was going to be bored, I just found myself kind of mesmerized by the scenery and the aesthetic of the movie. Was this bad, Julio? Did you have a bad time with this?
It's not bad, but I had a fluctuating level of enjoyment with it. First of all, before, just so we can get out of the way, even though I don't want to minimize how much of a part of a movie it is, but it looks great. I think maybe even its most ardent detractors, even Truffaut, should agree that the movie looks great. It's not to sound like Alex Mattis, but it's all just there. There's no special effects. There's nothing. It's just they put the camera there and they just capture nature. And it's different from Unforgiven. Actually, I love the fact that basically a year ago, we did Unforgiven, and it was we mentioned how that at the time was lauded as the realistic take on Westerns. And yes, because when you compare it to something like this, you're like, yeah. But at the time, and even now, I guess some people, one of the quotes at least was pointing out that this was a realistic take on the Westerns, or a more realistic take on the Westerns. So I think it's just one of those things where, yes, maybe when you compare The Searchers to earlier Westerns, this looks like, wow, such a complex protagonist. He's not just a cookie cutter good cowboy, but instead some guy with some real demons. But then decades later, you have William Money come in, and he brings his own landfill of grime and demons himself. So I like that this captured that scene in the 50s, the way and then Eastwood would recreate it in the 90s with its own particular filter. So if nothing else, I think that everybody should agree that that has value, that you have a movie that's shot beautifully and it shows you that, because we don't do that anymore. But who knows? I mean, we, as of this recording, we haven't watched Open Range yet. So.
You're preaching.
Well, we'll see. Like, I'm very curious what it's going to be like when we watch Open Range, and, story and performances aside, how are we going to feel about the way it's photographed? I guess that'll be interesting. But putting that aside, I watched this movie twice. By now, if you've listened to the show for a while, that's what I like to do when it's a movie that has a good reputation, because I want to watch it without taking notes, and I watch it taking notes. So the first time around, Alex, I was pretty captivated by the whole thing. And then the second time when I watched it today, as I was taking notes and kind of like breaking it apart, but more importantly, because I knew what paid off and what didn't pay off and how it paid off, if it did, some of that original charm was not there anymore. And so instead, I was just thinking, okay, this is a little bit of a waste of my time. Now that if I know that we're going to spend, like, let's say 10 minutes on the Rangers and John Wayne kind of going in a circle, and maybe because, I watched it so quickly, back to back, that second time I was like, okay, move it along. The entire sequence with the wedding, I was like, I know this doesn't add up to anything, and I don't find it particularly entertaining. It's at a really weird spot in the movie. So I didn't, that really, really diminished my enjoyment of the movie. But then, as it happens sometimes, we talk about the movie during Contrarian's Corner, and even though I'm being negative about it, in the process of being negative about it, I am reminding myself of the things I liked. And so I started kind of appreciating it again. So I guess I've kind of come full circle. I probably like it about the same as I did when I watched the first time, but I can tell you.
Took a journey on that.
Yeah. I was like the Rangers. I went on a big circle and they came back and the village was torched. I am glad that I can, that I finally watched John Wayne Western, much like when we talk about Unforgiven. I'm sure this hits harder to somebody that watches the John Wayne career chronologically. Like, I don't think that this is a deconstruction of the John Wayne persona the way that that Unforgiven is a deconstruction of the Eastwood persona. But it has to be, just based on what people were saying about the movie, I think it has to be a little bit of a darker take on that type of character. I mean, I don't know. You've seen other movies of his, so is he always kind of a son of a bitch? Or is he particularly nasty in this movie?
I started out looking for Debbie. I intend to keep on.
Why?
Why? Well, because she's
She's your nothing. She's no kin to you at all.
He's pretty nasty in this. Yeah. I mean, he's always kind of, gruff and tumble, but which makes it interesting to me, because I guess, he's the hero by the definition of the movie, but he's a fucking asshole.
Yes.
And the whole thing is we don't even know the worst of what he's done.
I think we see enough to make an assumption.
We can deduce. Yeah, we can make an educated guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think the real hero is Martin, but the movie's not set up for that. The movie, it's a John Wayne movie, so he is going to have... Okay, we're in real talk. How do you feel about the ending? Don't you think that it's a better ending if Martin chases after him and kills him before he kills Natalie Wood.
Yeah, but I don't dislike the ending. So I think that there's a very interesting, like, narratively, the idea of that happening is, Ethan's so dead set on, what he believes in, and Martin is the person, like, from the, the bloodline, so to speak, the family that bucks those trends and, has a higher level of understanding. But also there's the idea, and this is part of the Wikipedia page, so I didn't feel crazy, that Debbie's his daughter. Then Ethan's so obsessed with finding her, and I don't know if he lives with guilt or whatever about having sex with his brother's wife, and having this kid, and this is all unfounded stuff, but it definitely is interesting to ponder. You know what I mean?
Yeah, watching it the second time, I could headcanon that everything that's driving him is not rescuing the girls, but just avenging the death of the woman he loved. I mean, that's unfounded. That was just something that I was thinking as I was watching the movie a second time.
Mm-hmm.
Those close-ups of him are just, all that rage. You can see before he finds out that the family's dead, that his family's dead, just the real concern. And that's a concern of somebody that's in love. And then afterwards, the way that he keeps kind of making these dismissive comments saying like, yeah, well, we don't know if they're alive. They might be dead. And just the movie constantly focusing on how he seems to have these fits of rage where he loses control and just wants to hurt the Comanche. I was like, I could maybe sell it to myself, at least that way, that this is the story of a man who is blinded by revenge. And then at the last minute, he is reminded that there's more to life than that. And so he sees a child that actually is part of his family, whether she's his daughter or not. And then he forgets about it. He can look past the fact that she has been, I guess, tainted by the Comanche culture. So I can see it that way, or you could see it as in it's his daughter and he wants to rescue her, but then again, once they find her and she has been sort of assimilated into the culture, then he'd rather kill her than allow her to live like that. So that's also a valid reading. And then he changes his mind at the end. What doesn't work for me is, like I said in Contreras Corner, that I don't see that turn. Like I don't see the transition. He just literally is about to kill her and then he decides not to. Or at least that's what it feels like. And I think it's because John Ford just wants to trick us into thinking that he's going to kill her.
Yeah, it's very strange, just because it by any in any era of film, it would be like, what? Because it's exactly that. Like, it's the music and everything is, and then it builds, and think he's gonna stab her. It'd be like, Jason picked up one of the teenagers and just embraced them, like Chunk and Sloth. That's what it is. It's like the Chunk and Sloth embrace.
Yeah. Oh, look, this is it. I'm gonna rewrite John Ford. I guess he didn't write this. It's his movie, so I'm just gonna reframe it. We know that he's going to save her. He's going to embrace her. We know. Martin doesn't know, and so Wayne is galloping after her, reaches her, and he's holding her. He's just calming her down. He's like, "It's okay. I'm gonna take you home." And then Martin sneaks up behind them. He thinks that Wayne is trying to kill her, and so he shoots Wayne.
Ooh,
thinking that he's saving Natalie Wood. And then that's heartbreaker. Like, oh God. But the 50s didn't like that. They wanted a happy ending.
Didn't work out quite that way.
Dude, but no, I mean, all kidding aside, this movie is pretty fucking brutal in the things that it just implies. Oh, yeah. And we stayed away from going into it in Contreras Corner because we're trying to have fun there. But they never, I think it's worse that every time they may start talking about what has happened to the victims of the Comanche, that there's always, John Wayne will always say, like, don't make me talk about this. I'm not going to tell you, or, you don't want to know, because it just makes you imagine the worst. And the things that they imply, are bad enough, but I guess it's the strength of the movie. How do you feel about it? About the level of violence?
It's pretty. I don't know. I always feel like I say that it's pretty startling for the 50s, but like,
Right. Are we underestimating the 50s as far as
I think it's just underestimating a lot. Like, I love Freaks, and that's one of my go-tos of like, imagine watching this in 1932. But
Right.
it's, I don't know. It's weird. Like the cycle we've come in, because if a movie like this came out tomorrow, I think there'd be a lot of people offended by some of the casualness that is used to just imply the violence, both physical, like of obviously like a physical nature, sexual nature, that type of thing. And it's rough. It's personally, I don't feel like the tone of the movie ever betrays that. But just to your point, there's a lot of stuff in this. It's like, goddamn. I guess it's easy to, I'm not saying overlook that, but that not being a sticking point when you're dealing with some of the subject material being as problematic as it is in this movie, or outdated, problematic. I think that has a connotation of when the folks made this movie, they just thought that, that's what you do, And so it wasn't intentionally, you know what I'm trying to say with that. It wasn't like intentionally mean spirited. Like if someone tried to do that same thing today, like, what's a great example? What was that Cameron Crowe movie where Emma Stone was supposed to play a Hawaiian girl?
Aloha.
Yeah, come on.
Cameron Crowe.
You don't get to fall on the crutch of, well, it was the 1950s. But yes, there is a lot of really fucked up shit implied in this movie, and really just like upsetting stuff, like the young woman who they unbeknowingly, obtain in a trade, the way her character is just discarded and then tries to run back to her tribe and just gets killed. That's really that's sad, man.
You got yourself a wife, Sonny.
Nathan, you tell her to get on back there.
And at least that one gets a reaction from Martin that I thought was going to amount to more, but I was at least happy that it was there for a moment, right? They find her body, and he actually says it out loud. He says, "Why did they kill her? She didn't do anything." And so I thought
I did like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was going to be a turning point in the narrative where maybe Martin was going to start second guessing their mission and thinking, okay, so maybe there's more to the Comanche than just them being monsters. Maybe I thought the movie tricked me for a second to thinking that there was going to be more about it, but no, in the end, their portrayal of Native Americans is pretty. I mean, if you want to talk about the problematic side, that's the one that I would say, like, that's the thing that you wouldn't make today. The violence itself, I think that you would still do it. You just wouldn't mix it with lighthearted stuff the way that the movie does here, because there's a lot of, funny stuff or stuff that's supposed to be funny in The Searchers that to a modern audience, somebody like me, it felt a little jarring. And then I had to keep thinking, okay, but it was the 50s. And that's just how they made movies in the 50s. Like, that's where I think it applies 100%, because that's, I've seen it before. And I guess people just didn't blink twice whenever you were implying that a teenager had been like abused and murdered, one scene, and then like 10, 15 minutes later, you're having that guy delivering the letter and putting on that accent and just having on like a big comedic set piece. Like that, to the eyes of somebody that grew up in, the 90s, that doesn't really match. But in the 50s, I think that was just that was part of the thing that they did. They're like, this is the old West and horrible things happen, but we want to make things fun and entertaining. And like the score kept driving me crazy. And I just have to, again, remind myself, but that's just how it was. I didn't even get to bring it up in Concerns Corner, but did it bother you, the score? Because it's very whimsical.
At points, yes, I agree. I think that was one of our first episode that got any traction was Jaws, and that was one of our jokes about that. One of the most famous scores in the history of film. And we're like, it's too much. But there's some parts in this that the right score could have really put this movie over the top. Get Hans Zimmer on this action, brother. I'll tell you. Yeah, I know what you're referencing, and it's just so fascinating to think of a movie like this that is so dark. And Ethan's not a good dude, man. But in the mid 50s, people went and saw this, and John Wayne wins again. That's the ending, man. I'll go to that now. Yeah, we have this alternate version of events where Ethan doesn't make it to the ending, but I like the ending a lot of how he's left alone. And
But that's why you like it. Not because he saves Natalie Wood, but you like it because at the very end, that final shot, it's still him by himself.
Correct. Well, and also just, and I went on a long tangent earlier about how John Wayne wasn't a great actor, but now I'm going to talk about how good of an actor he is, of his body language and his facial expression and the way he turns around to leave, of knowing he deserves to be alone because he's a piece of shit. Like that was kind of my read on the ending there. And I like when they get to the house, how everyone like pairs off with somebody to take care of them. And, you know, no one turns around to say, Uncle Ethan, are you okay? I like that aspect of it. Cause yeah, he's a real motherfucker in this movie, man. He's just a really shitty outlook on the world and people in general. And he's obviously, it's not a judge of his character, you know, in real life. In the movie, he's like a racist, and, you know, it has really like.
Is the movie aware of that? Like, I think that the movie tells you that he has trouble. Okay, so the least charitable read on the movie is that the movie's telling you this dude is kind of, he doesn't have control over his emotions, which makes him a liability, right?
That's just the way things were then.
Right.
You know?
The problem is not that he dislikes the Comanche. The problem is that he's a hothead, so he kills them too soon, or he blows the mission because he's focused on killing them instead of being strategic. That could be it. Like, and especially even if you want to say that Ford was aiming for something more complex and telling you, no, this dude, it really is a problem. No, you know what? I take it back, because I don't think this movie supports any read that gives any sort of humanity to the Comanche other than the woman that marries Martin. And that is just, it's the 50s, you know, so I'm not canceling the Searchers. And hopefully if you've listened to the show for a while, you know that's one of my pet peeves, right? Like the people that would see the depiction of the Native Americans in this movie and then automatically say, okay, well, no, then I don't even want to talk about it, and ignore everything that the movie does right or anything that it was doing right at that time. But I think, you know, it's like the three things. It's like the depiction of the Native Americans in the movie and John Wayne's attitude toward them, and then what was Ford trying to say with this movie? If he was trying to say anything about that complicated relationship, if he thought it was complicated. And then the audiences, because I feel like if he's trying to tell audiences in the 1950s that John Wayne is not a good dude, I mean, I don't know, again, going back to, am I underestimating the audiences? Do you think that people get it? Do you think that people in the 50s are watching this and thinking, oh, he's racist, that's bad? Or do you think he's like completely justified in being hateful towards another culture?
I think that's the interesting thing to ponder, right? That's what makes art.
Second guessing what people 50 years ago, 75 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. That's one of the reasons why.
The problem is movies from 1956, there are contemporaneous reviews and like thoughts, and it's not hard to find, you know, people whose voices were worth hearing, having some say in the matter. But now every single living human with a square in their pocket can voice their opinions on things. So there are probably plenty of people like white dudes that watched this movie in 1956 and were like, well, hold on a minute. This not very good what he's doing. He's projecting his thoughts on all these people just because he doesn't like some of them, you know, that type of thing. And so I imagine there had to be people that were conflicted with what this movie states and, you know, the ideas that this movie poses to its audience. But is that 75 years from now, Julio, will people time search tweets?
Got me a letter here.
By golly, a leather?
It's for Miss Laurie.
2 leathers in 1 year, by golly.
Dude, I was aiming towards that that talking point, because I was thinking 75 years from now, there's going to be, hopefully, you know, society has moved in a direction that makes some things that we show in modern culture and pop culture today feels so outdated and so out of touch. The way that when we watch the representation of Native Americans in a movie like The Searchers, it feels so alien now. It feels so obviously wrong, right? If you made the Searchers today, you wouldn't just make the Comanche this sort of boogeyman that come in and destroy everything. Because for one,
that was the complexity with the execution of Killers of the Flower Moon.
Right. Exactly. And so 75 years from now, what are we going to be looking at? What are they going to be looking at from today and just scratching their heads and thinking, so did people get that this was wrong? And I can tell you, like, probably anything depicting sexuality, I think, current gender norms, something already happens, when we watch movies from 70 years ago and we see depiction of women and, just the gender politics from 70 years ago versus gender politics today versus gender politics from 70 years from now. I mean, I think it's inevitable unless we just take a huge step backwards and suddenly.
Well, I think sexuality is an interesting one to mention just because, I mean, there's you read those articles, and see those. Dude, people younger than us, there's people that listen to this show that I've seen voice their opinions of like sex scenes and stuff are unnecessary in movies. But that's like the younger generation. Is that Gen Z? Is that?
I've kind of lost track. Z is the youngest. There's a generation that doesn't want to have sex. They just want to have platonic relationships. And I say this
correct,
tongue in cheek, but there was an article.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I was thinking specifically.
So what, like someone watching fucking Cronenberg's Crash 50 years from now and being like, what? These depraved maniacs in the 90s.
Well, if only. I mean, and I think that would be a reaction. But I'm also thinking I could be wrong. But the way I believe society moves, unless, like I said, we take some major step backwards, I think that we're headed towards a point where gender is going to be so fluid that it's not even going to be an issue, right? Like it should be like nobody should give a shit like how you identify, it shouldn't be anybody's concern. Therefore, I can see a society, let's say 100 years from now, maybe, where gender it's not even a thing, which means that when you watch a movie, and so many movies made in this decade, for example, that deal with struggles that have to do with gender, they're going to feel really weird. And that's like on the positive side. There's some that are going to feel completely like wrong. Imagine this utopia where gender is no longer an issue. How do you feel about when you watch a movie that features people that are homophobic? It's just going to feel like prehistoric. Like, what is this? How could people ever feel that way? The same way that right now you watch The Searchers and it almost feels like it's a movie that doesn't seem to be aware that the settlers are in the wrong and that it's the Native Americans' land. It doesn't give it both sides. Today, we know that that's just these people came and invaded this land, and doesn't mean that, John Wayne and his family are bad people, but there's a lot of context that is not even hinted at in the movie. Mm-hmm. When we watch it, I mean, that was really my big struggle watching it. Through modern eyes, was that it would take me a little off the movie how brazen it was in its depiction of Native Americans as just like absolute monsters. And even though I know that that's part of the genre back in the 50s, that was the thing, it's like little kids playing cowboys and Indians. I mean, that was embedded in the culture. So it's not like I'm wagging my finger at John Ford and John Wayne and anybody else for making the movie the way they made it. But all these years later, it just feels archaic. It's distracting. And, I can only hope that there's movies made today that are also going to feel just as archaic in the future, because society has moved past some of those concerns.
The one thing I would push back a little bit against is the movies we make today don't look as good as this. So there is an artistic quality to this that won't be there 100 years from now, and people are like, I don't know.
But Alex, what if the downside is that 100 years from now, movies look so bad that the way they look today is amazing? They're like, man, remember when people knew how to use green screens?
Yeah, that's fair.
there are movies that not everything is what's it, Natalie Portman, Julianne Moore movie?
May, December?
May, December. Not everything is May, December.
That's fair.
Someday this country's gonna be a fine, good place to be. Maybe it needs our bones in the ground before that time can come.
Moving away from the scene stealer that is John Wayne in a John Wayne movie, and all the social political thing that John Ford may or may not have been exploring. How do you feel about the rest of the cast? Because it has the performances, they have that old timey quality, which honestly, like John Wayne didn't his acting didn't feel dated the way I thought it was going to. It just felt like, just what I expected from a John Wayne performance, even though I haven't seen any of his other movies. But the rest of the supporting cast, I think that some are not as good as others, and I don't think it's their fault. I think that the requirements of the genre in the 50s meant that they had to play it really broad. I mean, we made fun of the guy that almost marries Lori. How do you feel about him in real talk? Like, how do you feel about the cast?
It's kind of peaks and valleys all over the place, and it makes for kind of inconsistent delivery of the movie. I will say, big fan of what was that fella's name? Ward Bond, the Reverend and Captain Clayton.
Yep.
In the final battle, what happens? He gets stabbed in the butt. Something happens to his backside.
Yes.
It's very funny.
Bent over the last time we see him, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, he's really good. The dude who ends up trying to marry Lori, what was his name? Ken Curtis, Charlie. Yeah, his approach is interesting. I mean, for the time period, it's kind of be expected that you have your one or two main players and the rest of the cast is just kind of, here they are.
Well, how do you feel about Martin? I don't remember the name of the actor, but he's basically the second here.
I thought he was pretty good, to be honest. I mean, I don't know him from too much else, I guess. Jeffrey Hunter. He definitely had movie star looks of the era with his fucking piercing eyes and whatnot. Yeah, I thought he was quite good. I thought that he and Wayne actually had pretty good chemistry. They were definitely the A and B of this, with everyone else kind of fighting for third place. But I don't know. What did you think about him?
I mostly like him. I think that there's a couple of scenes where he just doesn't. I just didn't buy him, and I think he kind of won me over as the movie went on. I think at the beginning his character is kind of pointless because Wayne is driving the movie, and so I think the performance is affected by that because he's just floating around John Wayne. But then once they show you a little more what the differences are between these two men, and he starts standing up to Wayne more, and definitely by the time you get to the climax, the third act, where they're very much on opposite sides of the issue, I find him a lot more convincing. I think a lot more compelling to watch. So I think that it's the opposite of the Arnold and Conan effect. Nobody has the presence in the movie that John Wayne does, and that can sometimes play against them. The guy that plays the Reverend, the Captain, I think that maybe that's why he's your favorite, because he does stand toe to toe against John Wayne, and they, comes out unscathed. But for the most part, people just, they're not movie stars, and John Wayne is, and that works against them in a way. The guy that plays Mose, it's not that he's from like a different movie, like the other guy, like the guy that almost marries Lori, but it's such a broad character too that was another thing. When I was watching the movie, I was like, if I don't get over this, it's just going to bother me, nonstop. So I just had to say, all right, it's like, it's a 50th thing that you would have that type of character, the guy that's childlike, very like innocent, but then every now and then he knows what he's doing, right? Like when they get into a shootout, the first shootout that we see, Martin passes out after shooting one of the Comanches, and then this guy Mose like grabs the gun and starts shooting like he knows what he's doing. So it was weird. Again, I'm not gonna say it's a bad performance. I think that guy was doing exactly what was asked of him, but it's a weird character, and it just feels off in that world.
Grateful to the hospitality of your rocking chair, ma'am.
All right, well, I think I'm going to go first, Alex. I think that I'm
go for it.
Less positive than you are with this movie.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna land on 3 stars. It was a lower score when I finished my second watch, and then like I said, Contrarian's Corner reminded me of the good things, and it also kind of calmed me down. I think I did. As much as I keep talking about how during the movie, as I was watching it, I had to keep reminding myself that it was the 50s. I don't think that I completely assimilated that thought until we were talking about the movie. So, yeah, 3 stars. I think that fans of the genre will probably have a better time with it than I did. And people that are not into Westerns, I know that I would give them this one, though. I think I would still go with Unforgiven. And then after they watch Unforgiven, I'll be like, all right, well, do you want to see how it was before?
Just watch Bone Tomahawk. You'll be good.
Okay, so really, you can do it chronologically, where you do Searchers, Unforgiven, Bone Tomahawk. Or you can do it backwards.
Yes.
Bone Tomahawk,
and see
Unforgiven.
How much you can tolerate, yes.
Yes. I guess you should throw a Kevin Costner. Maybe you'll throw Open Range there. We can't tell you yet, but by the time you listen to this episode, you'll know, hopefully, well, if you're a patron, you'll have listened to our Open Range conversation that should enrich this episode. But yeah, 3 stars. Alex, what is your score?
B, somewhere, maybe closer to B plus range. That visually, this is just stunning. I'm comfortable with a 4-star, logging on Letterboxd. Yeah, I don't think it's like the all-timer or like the best Western ever or anything like that, but it definitely has its merit, keeping in mind all the things that we've discussed thus far. So it's certainly, especially if discussing with a younger audience, there's plenty of things you need to mention ahead of time, but I think it's a pretty great film for the time in which it was made. I don't know how quickly I'm going to run to revisit it or anything like that. I don't know if it's necessarily ever going to become part of the collection, but it's something I'm certainly glad we tackled here. So, Chaz, thank you. I hope the episode was everything and more that you wanted. So that is The Searchers. Julio, where do we head to next?
Coming up next, a movie I thought sounded familiar. This is a pick from patron Jamie Russell. It's the movie 44-Inch Chest. And the reason it sounded familiar is because our friends from Filmbusters did an episode on it earlier this year. So I know some of what it's about. Basically, I know it's a British movie with a bunch of British actors. How about you, Alex? Does that sound familiar at all?
No, but I looked it up when I initially saw that's what we were doing and saw Ray Winstone. So I'm down. I'm in.
You can always rely on Ray Winstone to provide entertainment. Just ask Leo and Nicholson in The Departed. Then on the patron feed, well, this month, it's Christmas, Alex. So we did a Gremlins commentary last Christmas. Of course, we have to do a Gremlins 2 commentary this Christmas. So you guys just prepare for that. That's the bonus episode for December. Peek behind the curtain. It's already recorded because, we're on top of it. It'll be actually, because of the way that we're scheduling things, it's December. The Gremlins commentary, Gremlins 2 commentary is going to drop Christmas Eve. And then the Exorcist 3 commentary, which is available for everybody, will be dropping on Christmas Day. So, make sure you line up your screenings accordingly so everything fits.
So you can do your George C. Scott impression for your family on Christmas.
Yes. Yeah. And then for QVRs, we actually have a little bit of a backlog. So check in on the page. You'll see we have 4 videos coming up at some point during December and January. But they include The Coffee Table from Alex, Mad Max, the original, and then for me, K-Pop Demon Hunters, and The Stuff. And also, because why not? Jamie Russell, the same Jamie Russell that gave us 44-Inch Chest, asked me if I would do a QVR on Die Hard. And that's a Christmas movie, Alex.
Nice.
So, I figure I would give it a shot. So that's as far as the video reviews. And then we have Contrarians After Hours. Alex, you came up with the idea for this very special After Hours. What are we doing?
Very special indeed. When I think I was flying home and I landed, I saw the news that Udo Kier had passed away. And I immediately texted Julio. I was like, hey, we should talk about Udo Kier's career because he's obviously made multiple appearances in Contrarian's history. He's a character of Contrarian's canon. But also just kind of talking about the importance of that guy. And Udo Kier was an accomplished actor that I don't think would be necessarily in the slot entirely of that guy, but he's certainly someone, folks in our age range who watch movies the way we do, you never think of him as Leo or Brad Pitt, but when he's on screen, you go, Udo. And I think it's kind of a lost art. So we'll just be talking about some of our favorite Udo Kier performances. We'll recap the movies we've covered that he has been in on The Contrarians. And again, just kind of talk about the art of that guy.
The Art of That Guy. That's the title of Udo Kier's autobiography. Unpublished. So check that out on our Patreon channel, patreon.com/Contrarian Prime. And now, Alex, let's get out of here.
Let's do. Welcome to our end credits.
Or as we usually call them, our perennial plugs.
We start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand and take us home with Summer of '99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothgieser is the man behind our logo and all the art you see related to our show. Reach out to him and let him know how much you like that little tomato. His email address is mildemonios@hotmail.com and his website is mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. Hans, thank you for all your support.
For those interested in the regularly absurd world of professional wrestling, Joe and the boys over at latenightgrin.com have you covered. Tell them the Contrarians sent you.
And we like to close with special thanks to our social media team of Zoe Perez and Coriari. Each of the social media accounts we mentioned in the introduction look as good as they do because of their work.
So that'll do it for this episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
Just for old time's sake, I really don't